I mean, it's been there for at least like 10 years at this point. Good evening, everybody. The Newton Planning Board would like to hold a public meeting on April 11th, 2023, beginning at 7 p.m. at the Newton Town Hall. It's actually 7:06. First, I'd like to salute the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the first thing on the agenda tonight is a voluntary lot merger. This actually would...
Would you like to appoint one of your alternates?
Thank you.
Mr. Papachristos is sworn, and he can be either Ms. Burke or Mr. Ryan for the evening.
I have no preference. Why don't we do Mr. Burke? Miss Burke, sorry. We good now? Okay. So the first thing on the agenda today is a voluntary lot merger for Terex Corporation. They're requesting a voluntary lot merger of their abutting lots referenced as Tax Map 6, Block 12, Lot 3, Tax Map 6, Block 13, Lot 2, located at 22 Whittier Street in Newton, New Hampshire. We actually do not have to vote on this, correct? It does not need to be a public hearing?
It does not need a public hearing. You do need to vote on it.
Okay.
So with a voluntary lot merger, as long as the merging does not create a nonconformity, which this one does not, you effectively have to approve it under statute. So this application does not create a nonconformity. It just makes it a more conforming lot. So with that, I would recommend that you approve it.
Motion to recommend.
Second, this is Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. Good evening, Barbara.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Eddy?
Aye.
Mr. Marchand?
Aye.
Mr. Papachristos?
Aye.
Ms. Eddy?
Aye.
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Okay, now moving to public hearings. The next item on the agenda is Ryan Maguire and Karen Laws of Newton, New Hampshire request a public hearing for a non-retailed home-based business landscaping at 75 Whittier Street, Newton, New Hampshire. The property is referenced as Tax Map 5, Tax Map 5, Block 4, Lot 5. Ms. Rowden, do you have anything to add to this? So we did not take jurisdiction previously.
So you guys did not take jurisdiction of this last time because the main issue was really Mr. Maguire's vehicles and the clause in your home-based business that does not allow commercial vehicles that weigh over to 12,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. Mr. Maguire supplied some information. I think the planning board got all of the photographs with some of the vehicle information. All of them were under the 12,000 pound limit except for one vehicle, and that's your 350?
Yes, so the sticker tag is 14,000 pounds, but I sent you guys over another document showing that it actually weighs 9,440.
Okay. The big clause is commercial vehicles that weigh over 12,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. So if it is your personal vehicle or if it's used for personal things, and some commercial, then it is not strictly a commercial vehicle. So do you use your truck only for commercial, or do you use it for both or personal?
I use all vehicles for personal and commercial use.
Okay. So I looked into this a little bit more, and just because of the discussion that we had previously, and I've talked to a few people in the community. I actually drove by your property. I live like right across the street, basically.
Yep.
Not in a butter, though. I just want to put that out there. My personal opinion is that it's not a negative impact to the community. Specifically what you're doing, the vehicles that you're using or proposing to use are, in today's nature, somewhat light duty compared to a medium duty vehicle.
Yep.
So just putting that out there, you came to us in an effort to do the right thing, register your home-based business. I'm aware that there may be some home-based businesses in your vicinity or proximity that may or may not exceed the current weight limits, just to make everybody aware. So I also spoke to the road agent and previous members of the planning board of that regulation of where or how the 12,000 gross vehicle weight rating, how that came about. And based on my discussions with people, the current road agent has no concerns that that's impacting the roads. Like a UPS truck is greater than that.
Yep.
Or personal-based pickup trucks. My own pickup truck has a greater gross vehicle weight. So, your explanation that you use your vehicles both personal use and commercial use, I think is a good explanation. And then moving forward, I think my recommendation to the planning board and the board of selectmen in March next year, when we can change that to the effect of, Jim, do you have the clause that we use for it cannot be a negative detriment or negative impact to the community?
Yes.
Yep.
So, I think that the planning board needs to revise their regulations to maybe expand that to like a commercial weight of 26,000 GVW, get it to a commercial level where you would need a CDL.
Yep.
And the intent, or at least my understanding of the intent was to limit the use of like a typical triaxle, not a one-ton vehicle. So that's kind of my spiel. I'm not sure if anybody else has any questions. Jen?
Not a
or
question,
comments?
just a statement. While recognizing that this clause has caused problems with home-based businesses before, and what the intent versus what people are asking, and like the reality of the businesses. So I do think the planning board can work on it for next year, but for now, you have no flexibility in what you can approve or not approve on this clause. But you also don't have a definition for commercial, so that was why I asked that question, just for clarity and for the record, just so it is clear for everybody, it's on record. So if there were to be a problem, you have something in writing. You have the documents that were provided to the town as well, so. With that, I do actually think the application is complete, so if you wanted to move forward with that.
Is there a motion to take?
Motion to
Jurisdiction.
take jurisdiction.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
Yes, this is Barbara. I have a question. Can you, Mr. Maguire, can you tell me what is the benefit of you being able to register your truck commercial? Is it going to cost you less money to do that? Or is it some sort of license that you need to get to be, deemed commercial?
So
Ms.
with,
Rowden has a statement.
I just want to be very clear, and Barbara, I understand your question, I think, and you can certainly have Mr. McGuire answer. The nature of his registration should have no bearing on the planning board decision. The planning board decision just does enable him to register his vehicles as commercial vehicles, but they are separate decisions.
Yep.
So you certainly can hear the answer, but
Okay.
I just want to make sure that's clear.
am I answering?
You can answer if you would like.
Okay, so there's no benefit. It's just the vehicle was bought under a commercial loan, so therefore it had to be registered under my business name. Does that answer it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
You said it's a 350, right?
it's an F-350, yes.
Yeah. And I, for the record's sake, that's what I drive for work. And it's just a slightly glorified, a slightly bigger version of a 150. It's not like it's a monstrous, like you would think when you think commercial type truck. So it's not like it's gonna stand out like a sore thumb in the neighborhood.
Jim,
I already have a note to change that line in the ordinance if possible, and the board may consider going with excluding tri-axle vehicles, because that was the original intent 12 years ago when we did that, was that we were trying to specifically exclude large dump trucks that would be owned by East Coast Concrete or Gibbs Construction. It was never intended to restrict somebody owning a pickup truck with a dump body. Problem is that technology advanced much faster in the way of suspension systems on vehicles than anybody noted on when it came to the zoning ordinances.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments before I open it up? Barbara, are you good?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. How about from the public? Nobody's willing to get up and chat today. Do you have any other comments? So we have to do a finding of fact. And Jim gave me something somewhere, just so I do this correctly.
This is a motion to take jurisdiction.
Yeah,
We,
so we have to
already
vote
did
on
that.
that.
I thought we already took jurisdiction.
We did.
You did.
Discussion.
Okay.
Bob made the motion, Mr. Eddy
Yeah.
seconded it.
Right, the motion was,
To accept jurisdiction.
that's what I thought.
So we got to vote on that, and then we can,
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marchand,
aye.
Mr. Papachristis,
Aye.
Ms. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Now, I am going to make a motion that we allow Ryan Maguire and Karen Law's permission on their non-retail home-based business with the following conditions: that the business plan falls within the scope of the applicable zoning and site plan regulations for a non-retail home-based business, that justice would be served by approving the application. Proposed conditions are: 1, to obtain a Newton business occupancy permit. No outdoor storage of business-related materials. All business shall take place inside the home or off-site, and the hours of operation shall not detract from the quality of your neighborhood.
I'll second that. This is Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marchand,
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis,
Aye.
Ms. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
All right.
So we'll get you some papers in a couple days.
Okay, sounds
Thank you,
good.
Mr. McGuire.
Thank you.
Second on the public hearing, or third on the agenda, second on the public hearing, is Michael and Kathy Hills of Newton, New Hampshire request a public hearing for an accessory dwelling unit, ADU, at 10 Crossman Circle, Newton, New Hampshire. The property is referenced as tax map 8, block 2, lot 12-10. Jen, do you have any comments?
The application for an accessory dwelling appears complete with recommended conditions they just be your standard conditions that it complies with the ordinance. So,
Perfect.
recommend accepting jurisdiction.
Can I have a motion to accept jurisdiction?
Motion to accept jurisdiction.
Second.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marchand,
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis,
Aye.
Ms. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
All you.
All right, thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
No,
Don't go,
come
not so
tell us what
fast.
you're looking to do.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
We took jurisdiction, it's
You
not
have to tell
approved
us,
yet.
my guess is we want to put a accessory
Yeah, this is my
dwelling unit.
second, I was here last year, actually, with
Mm-hmm.
a different design.
Yep.
But it's really the same plan, except on the opposite side of the house. So originally, we were gonna do the garage, but after I got my vehicles in, after cleaning it out, no, I'm gonna keep my vehicles in there. So we decided to go in the back.
Okay.
So it, same footprint, except the location is different.
Perfect. It's under 800 square feet. I don't have any real questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
I do, I have one question. I just would like to know where the parking is for the ADU, because the ordinance says you have to show parking space for 2 vehicles.
Yeah, it's our driveway, it's the same location where our driveway currently is. So you would walk to the entrance right from on the side of the driveway.
Okay.
So utilizing the existing driveway.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board? How about from the public? Okay. Can I have a motion?
I'm going to make a motion that we approve the permission. Where am I here? For Michael and Kathy Hills. The plan falls within the scope of the applicable zoning and site plan regulations for accessory dwelling units, and also that justice would be served by approving applications. With that being said, the conditions that will be set on the precedent will be to obtain all local and state permits, including occupancy permit. A copy of the approved septic plan shall be placed on file, and that the limits of the accessory apartments are as follows. Pursuant to RSA 674:71, 674:73, the planning board is hereby authorized to grant a condition.
You can just cite the ordinance
Okay.
instead of having to
Don't have
read
go
all of
through
it.
the whole thing? All right. So according to those, the property owner must occupy one of the 2 dwelling units. No more than 2 bedrooms are permitted in the access apartment. No more than 4 people shall occupy said apartment. Off-street parking sufficient for both units must be provided. You demonstrated that already with your driveway. The septic system shall be adequate for both units per New Hampshire water supply and pollution control standards. The accessory apartment must be attached to the primary dwelling unit. Accessory apartments are not permitted in detached accessory structures on the same lot. 7, that the accessory apartment shall have convenient and direct access to the primary dwelling unit, in quotations, a connecting inside door, and its own separate entrance or exit. Appearance shall remain that of a single-family residence. The entrances for the accessory apartment shall be located on the side or rear of the building. The size of the accessory apartment shall be a maximum of 800 square feet. The primary dwelling unit and the accessory apartment shall share common utilities, including well, septic system, heating, and electrical services. And design of the accessory apartment shall be such that it would be readily adaptable to conversion in part by the primary dwelling. It shall meet all life safety codes, and the utilities must be shared, as I mentioned earlier, with the home in the accessory apartment.
I will remove number 3 from the list.
That were reiterated, yes.
I second.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marchand,
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis,
Aye.
Ms. Eddy, Mr. Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Now we're
Now you can go.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a continuation of 125 Development New Hampshire Corp. of Plaistow, New Hampshire's request for a public hearing for an amended site plan at 3, 5, 7, and 9 Puzzle Lane, Newton, New Hampshire. The property is referenced as Tax Map 14, Block 1, Lot 27-4. And just because there's a few new people on the board, this is different than the,
Do you want me to walk people through it a little bit?
Sure, I was just going to say that this is not the project that we approved last time. This is just north on 108. There's existing 3 or 4 buildings there, and we're mainly focused on the most northwesternly area.
So this application came before the board in September of last year for an amended site plan. As part of that, the property owner was stated that they needed to develop an as-built plan, which is basically show a plan that shows everything the way it was constructed. During the course of that, it was found that there were some irregularities on the site plan. It wasn't built quite to the original approval. So the board at this point has not accepted jurisdiction. There's been a lot that has been brought forward. They have supplied a stormwater drainage plan that was submitted last week. Because one of the things that was not constructed with the original plan was some stormwater detention basins, there are a few other items that have been come up. That's really one of the largest. So they are trying to bring the site into current compliance while also having a record of the site as it currently exists. I'm gonna, at this point, if that's okay with the chair, let Tom sort of give what they have presented. But there are a few other issues. That's just a quick history of the site.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Tom Leckborg, Northern Constructors Builder for 125 Development, and the applicant. I hope you've all read the letters from Mr. McDonough, the applicant. He's asked a request for a waiver for the retaining wall and for the trees, and he's offered to post a bond for the work to be needed to be done. Most of the work is going to happen in this front pond right here, which is actually not associated with the buildings, but that's where the water runoff comes through, where all the roof drains and so on. And then there's some changes on the back.
Mr. Chair, can you ask him to talk into the microphone? I can't hear what he's saying, please.
Okay, so there's some changes to the back of the building, 9A, B, and C, following the fire emergency path. We have narrowed it up, we've added grass, we've added some berms in there, and we've changed the drainage to make it work better, and we're bringing it forward to the new pond, well, existing pond, but we're making it larger, deeper. It'd be the same diameter, but so I think that's really about where it is. Everything else, we're ready to post a bond for to hold it so we can get to work and fix everything.
Sure.
So now I have some bullet points.
Okay.
The drainage plan that was submitted, the town engineer has not had a chance to review. He does have, but he hasn't had a chance to review. I only got it last Thursday. I have not gone through the drainage report to make sure sort of the inspections, maintenance aspects are. You need your town engineer to review this. My concern about what was submitted is that the drainage plan does not seem to match the accurate as-built that your surveyor provided. There seem to be some discrepancies which would certainly impact the drainage. And the thing that I noticed was the parking area over on the west side. I'm sorry, actually, northwest. The one that was added. Yep, that's where I'm talking.
It's where the crushed stone is?
Yep.
Okay.
That the topography doesn't quite match what's on the site. The as-built you guys had made is significantly more accurate than that appears. The town engineer needs to review that. But I just wanted, it was something I noticed, so I wanted to at least point it out to you to be aware of as an issue, or what I am spotting as an issue. The 2 letters that were submitted from the property owner about the landscaping and the retention wall that's holding up what is basically the fire lane at the back of the buildings.
Right.
You want to hear from the town engineer on that. It's in my review letter that I strongly recommend you require a professional engineer evaluate and stamp it. I understand he may be having trouble getting that evaluation, but that does not mean that it, worst case scenario is you actually have to take it down to then reconstruct it before someone might stamp it. That's sort of worst case scenario. I'm not saying that you need to require that, but I would at this point recommend you still get an engineer to stamp that for structural integrity because it's a fire lane. It's a fairly large wall. The other item is the landscaping bonds. Landscaping has been a big discussion on this amended site plan. One of the abutters who actually happens to be here, I don't know if he plans to speak. This has been a issue that has been ongoing. I think that the board needs to give some careful evaluation, and because so many of you are new specifically, I think we need to have a dedicated discussion about the landscaping that was supposed to be there, what is there, and what is proposed to be there or not. And I don't think that you have necessarily all of the information for this evening to have a good discussion on that, but that would be my recommendation at this point. It might be helpful for the applicant to lay out similar to what Barry actually did at the last plan with your last application you had before, of the history of what has occurred. I know there's a little bit in Mr. McDonough's letter. That would be my suggestion because I think it would help get everybody onto the same page to have a thorough discussion on the landscaping aspect specifically. So those are my bullet points at this point.
Jim, do you have something else?
I supplied everybody, especially the new members, with the last KB Partners opinion letter, the last Circuit Rider opinion letter, the last listing that we received from the applicant on what the changes were proposed. They had the newest plans. I did not give everybody a copy of the landscaping plan. I have that digitally and can print out and give everybody an 11 by 17 of that. Anything else that board members might need in order to make an informed decision.
I have another question. Were you in the process of amending your alteration of terrain permit?
For this, I believe it's just in process right now, so
I don't think it's been filed.
you sure?
Fairly sure.
Okay, I'll have to look. Because it will just be a renewal of it, so,
It's going to be amended.
okay.
This will trigger an amended.
Oh, it'll try to, okay, amended, yeah. I'll have to ask Barry, he just couldn't make it tonight, so
Yeah, and
why it was not done. I guess we need to, it's been a lot of change on the back of the building, so,
right, and I think my concern for you
yeah,
is that I don't, from a money standpoint on your side, if we
Right.
flip this over to Mike Vignali, the town engineer, to review, he's gonna review it and say, I'm just gonna pick a number, $300.
Right.
To say it doesn't match your existing conditions.
Right.
And when this goes up to the state, they're gonna say it doesn't match the existing conditions. So before we release Mike to do a review, I would talk to Jones and Beach. I'm trying to limit the back and forth.
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
Do you have-
The board could authorize your town engineer to be in communication with the applicant's engineer to be able to figure out what they need to do to get the drainage plan up to the level it needs to be.
I think that would
That would be the smart move.
useful in the effort to like make this go a little bit smoother and
Yeah,
reduce your costs and move this forward.
yeah.
I guess I'll leave it at that. It's fairly hard for me to review the drainage report.
Right.
So I
It's
think,
lengthy.
yeah, I mean, this is what I do every single day.
Oh, I realize that, but I'm just saying.
I think there's some disconnects of what's actually out there and what is in the report, and I think it would be beneficial to do that because,
Johnson Beach still created as-built.
right, or Alpine created an as-built survey that is different than your existing condition.
Right.
The existing condition shown here.
Right,
And I think it would help if they were the same or very, very similar.
right.
Because, I mean, the goal of this is to basically capture what's out there.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
And then you, sorry, Jen, recommended that we speak specific to the landscaping, or do you want to kind of walk through?
No, just my recommendation is the applicant list out the history of the landscaping as to what was originally approved, and Jim can give you the original landscaping plan, to then what has changed and what they are proposing now, because they are here for an amended site plan. If they want to change something, now is the time to be asking. Doesn't mean that you have
Okay.
to approve it, but now is the time to be asking.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll have that written out.
Okay, so are you planning on coming back with exactly what you want to do for the landscaping? Or,
Oh, I think the landscaping is part of what we're doing right now, so I think when I come back, when as-built and this, but we'll discuss
okay,
in writing obviously there's a big change in the back of the buildings. We've narrowed up the road. There's a ton of grass all gone in. So there, I mean, this, you look at this whole, I think it ended right about here before it widened out. It was a lot wider.
Barbara, just for your information, he's referring to the retaining wall in the back of the buildings, knowing that you can't hear.
Okay, thank you.
But then there's also the waiver that he's requesting about the trees that were planted, stating that they tried to plant the other shrubberies and stuff and they didn't take.
And we did.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And,
Right, but it's not all on that side.
Right,
The hot side is the back side.
right.
The front side is, listen,
Well, that's so that they understand.
right, I know that, I agree with you, yeah, they don't, this has been going on forever, and
Yep.
so what I'm saying, okay, we'll itemize what we're doing back there better to give everybody understanding what it was and what it will be.
Correct.
Is that
Right,
what we're-
I think it would be beneficial for the record,
Okay,
protects you as well as originally proposed and were approved to plant 8 trees, and now you're proposing to plant 7 trees, and
I understand what you're saying,
or whatever the numbers are.
right.
I got a question for you. Just looking at this picture, did that gravel access road get squeezed out in the back of the building?
It's narrow.
It's narrower than what it originally was, or
Right, well, that's what we haven't done that yet, but that's what we're planning to do.
gonna happen?
Because what we're doing is adding grass. So grass has a volume for water.
Yep.
Right? And we're creating a berm, I believe, too, in the back, so. I'm trying to make Mr. Fitzpatrick
All
happy.
right, so that's where he's saying right here. This
And just
strip right
one other thing, because
Yeah.
it
be the width here.
It surprised me a little bit that you guys are wanting to get rid of the, I'm gonna say the parking lot that you had added. You're just wanting to have that be grassy, loam seated area.
That's gonna end up being
Okay.
to the left.
You're referring to the parking area to the west.
Yes.
Oh, you mean this?
Yep.
Run the grass off.
At the end?
Yep.
At that 12 foot. Is that
I don't think we're proposing to make that grass.
Well, it says existing gravel to be removed, install loam and seed.
Okay, sorry.
To me, that says
Yeah,
you're turning it back into grassy area. So if that's not the intent,
Yeah.
then I would change that plan.
Sorry, you're correct.
Okay.
I get too many things on the go, sorry.
Yep. I understand. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Do we have any, Barbara, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't, not at this time. I'm fine.
So the last question I have is like the retaining wall, right? We can't even find the building permit on it.
Well, that would be my question. Was a building permit ever pulled?
Yes, it was inspected, we have the inspection sheets, but we don't have the building permit. Downstairs, they don't have them, can't find any of it. The complete file for A and C is completely missing.
I can't explain to the building department's record keeping one way or the other.
Right.
The retaining wall was never on the original site plan.
Correct.
So in theory, a building permit should have actually never even been issued for it, but
Right.
what happened, I don't know. I would still recommend the board have a structural engineer review it. I would wait for your town engineer. I think he's going to say the same thing, but I don't want to speak for him.
I don't think we have an issue having a structural engineer review it. It's for the structural engineer to stamp a A-OK on it. That's our issue.
I think personally, it's possible if somebody's comfortable with the design, knowing, I mean, it's not uncommon for a professional engineer to, you can caveat anything and stamp it as long as like you have the caveats. It's like, I wasn't out there, if it was based on a drawing that was constructed per this drawing that was prepared by, I'm just gonna pick on Jones and Beach because they happen to be an engineer of record, like, and they would cite a detail on D1, this retaining wall. If it was built and constructed per that detail, it should be okay. And I think that's what we're looking for, because we, as the planning board, didn't review and approve any design. The town engineer didn't review anything. And it wasn't on the drawings, so I think, at least me personally, not speaking for the entire board, that would be something to say, yes, this was reviewed by somebody. So it sheds the liability of that professional engineer from sealing it, but it shows that it was designed by somebody. And, you know, if it was like Shea Concrete,
That's exactly what it is a shade crack.
they provide stamp drawings all the time.
I know that, but I'm sorry, we just can't find them. We bought all the material from, did everything, all the geomats done by them and
My
everything.
guess is you could call them and they would provide it, if it's only 6 years.
I know that, but that's a no. They retained for 3. So we were looking, so there was a design submitted for the building permit, that's how we did it.
So that wasn't approved by the planning board.
Pardon me?
That wasn't approved by the planning board.
I understand what you're saying, but it's like, there's more problems with the original drawing than there is correct with the drawing. So as we proceeded to construct, we realized that there was a 60-foot difference in elevation problems on the back line, but that was,
I guess that's why you're here.
that's why we're here. That's how, so our quick decision was not to have the hill fall down, was to build a retaining wall. And it's been there, what,
There was a 60-foot bust in the survey,
Yep.
and
Behind Jamie's house where we were talking about the pond that's missing, remember? In the slope? That slope is, you know, not at all with the drawing when I had the original one, if you looked at it. You know, that's our issue, that whole back line. The hill behind us is much higher than it is in the original drawing from original surveyor. So I don't know where we're gonna go with this, but what I'm saying to you is that
I've seen busts of like a quarter foot or a foot in a survey. That's pretty bad.
right.
I personally, I mean, I've been doing it that long. I've never seen a 60-foot bust.
If you
And
think
that's-
about it, we put a retaining wall there where there's not one required.
Mr.
red
Chair,
one,
could I ask Tom a question, please?
Sure.
Okay. Tom, when the applicant started doing extra things that were not on the approved plan, is there a particular reason why he never came to the planning board to ask to change it and to explain why he wanted to change it? Or did he just feel like that's what he needed to do and did it?
I think originally the wall was put in, it was an emergency situation to not let the whole backyard of the neighboring house come down. We didn't really know what was gonna happen. So I think
Well, I
we put
do-
it, so what we did is we went to the building inspector, because he was out, obviously we see them frequently. And we said, look, we're gonna put a wall in, but we need a permit, and what do we need to do? So we permitted the wall and went ahead and built it, but it's probably 4 feet, I think it's 2 layers higher than we originally thought we would need to get it to all the work. So it's 3-foot blocks, I think, so 6 feet higher than we thought originally. So there's discussions about engineer walls, the heights, the permits required. There's a 3 foot of landscaping wall, 8 foot, building inspector wall, anything higher, engineered wall. And I think that's where we're at this point, so.
I guess
It's been there 6 years, it's not, it's not moving, it's not going anywhere. It's not little landscape blocks, these are the big blocks.
which actually concerns me more. But from a geotechnical stability standpoint and like the global stability of the wall, I just, so like rewind about 6-7 years ago, whenever it was, there was a 60-foot bust and the survey, and then all of a sudden there was slope stability concerns that we had to build the wall, but so material was removed. And like the natural progress of things is like, oh, we probably shouldn't dig a hole and that slope's gonna fall down. That's,
We didn't dig a hole, we're cutting straight, it was a straight cut.
well, okay, removing material to expose a slope that would cause a slope stability concern for the requirement of a wall. I guess it would have been easier, or, hindsight's 20/20, and I understand that.
Right.
Maybe not excavate that deep and go straight back and raise the finished floor of the building a couple feet, so there would not be the need of a wall, or get a wall approved and permitted, or come back a couple weeks later and say, hey, we ran into an issue, there was a bust in the survey, here's our stamped drawings, planning board, are you okay with it? Do you want your engineer to review it?
I understand your concerns, I understand the process of it, but that's what we chose to do at the time. Wrong or right, that's how we did it at the time. I mean, we have received occupancy permits for all the buildings. We've gone through this whole thing. It's not like this wall just popped up this week or 6 months or 8 months ago. It's been there. Everybody's aware of it.
Right, and those are all outside the planning board, and it.
Well, I understand what you're saying, right? But we keep coming back in for occupancy permit. Everybody has to sign off. It keeps going around, right? The chair signs off on it. What I'm saying to you is that there's no surprise that that wall is there. The wall's been there since day one. It went in first, and we built buildings after the wall because the wall had to be there. Without it, it wasn't gonna. The building footprint wouldn't fit where it is. So I guess I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to say that this is what happened. How do we get out of it? How do we get to the next step, I guess?
So that wall was not known to the board until last fall, late last summer.
So
It was never on any of the changes of uses that came before the board. The town engineer had not been out to inspect in several years. I can't speak for building officials.
Mike would have seen the wall many times. Many times. It's been there. He's been on site. It was constructed probably 6.5, 7 years ago when we started the buildings. It was approved 2015, so where are we? Yeah, 8.
But I think to the point of moving forward, the board needs to either wait for the town engineer's review to
Right.
say if he still thinks you should have it stamped or if some other mechanism might be recommended. I think you should hear from him. My recommendation is still that you get a stamped letter from an engineer that has reviewed it for structural integrity. But it is the planning board's determination in the end, whether you're going to require that or not.
Okay.
So I guess we'll wait for the town engineer's opinion on the waiver request I'm not sure if it's a waiver request or a,
It's more of a condition recommendation and whether you want to approve that or not. It's really a completeness. Do you need that information to determine if the amended site plan is complete? Kind of like you need the drainage analysis to determine if the amended site plan is complete.
I have a question, and you may not be able to answer this. From a liability standpoint, from the planning board or the town of Newton, if we waive that request or accept the request to add that condition, and our town engineer says, we probably should look at that and require a wall, where do we stand?
I would
And ask
see
counsel.
counsel about the liability of the town. Obviously, if an engineer stamps it, then they become liable, but if they then say, well, whoever built it incorrectly, well, then they become liable. But if an engineer is not seen that it was constructed, has no oversight as to how it was designed, then that's the reason you're probably having someone unwilling to stamp it, is because they can't verify that it will not cause a problem.
Correct.
And I think that is in this request. I think it cites or mentions that this is private property.
It absolutely is private property. But I will say this goes against a fire lane. This is not a decorative retaining wall.
Yeah, it's the line, I am formally asking the board to remove the requirement that an engineer sign off on the retaining wall, as the wall has been in place for 6 years with no issues, and it is a private site. And I'm happy to reach out to our counsel for that clarification, depending on what Mike Vignelli says.
Mr. Chair?
Just to speed it up, you could actually ask your town council, is the town liable if we have something constructed without a licensed engineer review?
Okay. Yes, thank you, Jen.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Barbara.
I was just going to ask that, if we could get town council to give that answer, because I would hate to give the blessing of the planning board by giving them an out that they don't, because paperwork can't be found, and then God forbid, if something happens and that wall falls down and hurts somebody, indirectly that kind of comes back to the planning board if we said okay.
I would agree, and that's kind of my concern, is that we're now accepting or acknowledging the fact that this may or may not have been designed correctly. Or there's no paper trail.
What if we wrote a letter to the fact that we release the town of any responsibility of it?
I guess I would, again, have to go to council.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there any other comments from the board? Jim, do you have?
I was just going to make, on the last comment, because this is real estate versus a roadway, you can't surrender liability, because if it changes hands, that the new person has not agreed, you need to stay far away from that one.
Yeah, it needs to be deeded, I would believe. I'm not sure if that's possible. That's my concern.
Yeah, well, it's condo-wise, right? So it's just to the skin of the walls, right? The rest stays with Mr. McDonough.
Just an aside, if there are documents that cannot be found in the building department, they issued permits based on, and it's a physical permit that you get.
Right.
It is quite possible the applicant has those permits, because most people retain them because you need them for your insurances and all that other things. So
We've also not been able to find them. But there's also history not receiving an actual physical permit in town. There's a lot of that. Has been for the last 10 years I've been building in town.
I'd like to wait and see what legal counsel has to say about all of this and propose exactly what's going on to legal counsel and let him run through the gambit of the do's, don'ts, and what ifs, and be able to acquaint us with what we can and what we can't and what we shouldn't do.
And I'm cautious to basically spend the town's money to address this issue from a legal standpoint. But for us to reach out and seek advice on this,
This is a formal application. This you can charge to your escrow account, just like your town engineer. I mean, obviously within reason and everything, but.
I still think it may be easier to
I hear what you're saying.
an engineer out there
Right.
to say, yes, it's fine, or
Trust
Yes.
me, we've been trying.
I guess Jones and Beach has this capability in-house.
Correct.
They may be able to provide an opinion.
Well, they're not structural engineers, that's my problem.
They could find somebody.
That's why I don't have someone yet, because we haven't been able to. That's somebody who wants to take on the wall, I guess it would be. Because we were chasing a stamp too, though, so, that's. I hear what you're saying, you have to write, but they didn't see it, but it's kind of a gray area when you start writing that, like you were saying, but. Short of taking it down, that's basically where we're at.
Okay.
Well, let's wait for town council and then we'll wait. I'll talk to Barry Geyer and then see if we can make this move forward somehow.
Okay.
Best ability.
Yeah, see if Mike can get out there and take a look at it.
Mike's inspected walls for us before, and
That's what I'm saying.
yeah. So I mean, I'm not to dig another hole, but you know what I mean. This is not the only retaining wall
Right.
on the property, and they're constructed all the same.
And I think if I go back to Mike's original comment back in October of 2022, his recommendation was somebody should look at this. And my guess is that potentially, or that comment came because he had a potential concern, and maybe I'll email him and ask for clarification of why.
He also went out when he and I did a site walk in November. So he's seen it. I mean, he didn't spend a lengthy evaluation of it.
Yeah, I'll look at the
he has
pictures,
seen
but
it.
I think there's like a negative batter on the wall that's causing him to make a comment, or
Well, that was part of my concern because I brought it up when it came after the walk and I looked at the pictures and I saw a few of those stones jutted out a little further than the rest of them. And my concern was that they could be as big as they are and what you're saying, through sediment, through the rain and all of that, with dirt shifting and the weight of that, it can move mountains. And my concern was some of those upper barriers, if it's not draining properly, which is what we were talking about, the drainage, it could be shifting some of those bigger stones outward.
Well, what you're speaking about, Bob, is actually they're waste blocks. These aren't the fancy blocks. They do have the keyways and the tops in them. So, I mean, it's been the same. It hasn't moved. They're not perfectly straight because this is, how they're made. And I think the drainage works perfectly. We still see you running, so it comes out to the pond. So it's like I don't have an issue with that. The battering issue on the wall there's a little bit of that. That's the only thing that sticks out on it. I think that's what Mike was looking at.
Right.
Because as we get to the end of the wall, it's very upright. But that's not really holding back
Like
the
I said,
majority.
it's the optical illusion that you're
Right.
getting when you're looking at that
If you looked
wall.
at it in person, it does. I saw the pictures there. It's hard to tell. By looking at the picture, it gives you a feeling of something different than what's there, but that's here nor there. We still need to do this, so.
How tall is that wall right now?
I believe it's 14 feet in one section. It's not the same height all the way, it varies.
Shay's wall doesn't have grid to hold it back at certain heights?
Oh yeah, that's how it's done. It's got a grid, it's got a peg,
Yeah.
it's got probably 5 feet of crushed stone behind it, all the way top to bottom. It's got a drainage pipes at 3 levels, I believe, if I remember right. It's been a long time since I made it. It's been sitting there like quite a while. But yeah, I think at the very end, I think it's 8 feet on the most northwest part, and then the far, kind of in the middle behind this building A. Right there's where it's the tallest. It's a small section right there.
Right.
My guess, because I deal with Shay quite often,
Yeah.
if they provided stamped drawings, they have them.
Well, we'll try with them again, but they said they didn't, so we have requested them already.
Because I mean, outside of Newton Planning Board, like
Right, they're kind of, like the plans they do are kind of generic, and that's what we thought, like, you know, what's the big deal, but.
right, but they do provide stamped drawings that are generic based, like this detail, this height, you know.
Correct.
X number of, every lift put 15 feet of geogrid after 6 feet, you gotta go back
Correct, yeah.
16, 18 feet.
Right.
But
Yeah.
based on the soil conditions. And so they probably,
I will chase them, I'll go down and see them again and see if I can get that carried up on it, but that's basically where everything is from, so we've done multiple walls in the project with them, so. But, all right, I guess, what do you want to do, continue it, or
I
get something more?
believe KB Partners, in the email that I forwarded yesterday, regarding the fact that he did not have time because of the holiday weekend to review that, I believe he made a comment about and that was forwarded to all the planning board members and Jones and Beach.
are you referring to the ADA and guardrail issues as well?
Yes.
Oh, so Mike McNally stated, wondering if the guardrail or handicap accessibility issues have been resolved, haven't been out there to check. So there were some guardrails that were missing and you had placed boulders and some of the handicap striping.
All the handicap striping's done, it's all been,
Yeah, you mentioned that.
we had pictures.
4 months ago.
Yeah, like that's all complete. Everybody's has got, all the handicap stuff's been dealt with. That's quite some time ago.
And the
I think you were
guardrails,
just asking.
Yeah. We provided pictures some time ago for it.
in the guardrail issue, has that been,
No, they're coming, we'll probably install them in 2 months.
okay.
But for right now, the rocks are still there, and we did adjust what he wanted, all the rocks, size. That's all been adjusted and taken care of. That was probably like November, December, somewhere around there. It's been quite some time.
Are there any other comments from the board?
Nope.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, do you have anything? Mr. Hamilton?
Hi, I'm Roger Hamill. I live in Sergeant Woods. And for those of you who didn't know, I was on the planning board for several years prior to this. I got some prepared statements and then may answer questions beyond that if you'd like. When the site plan for this lot was first approved in May of 2015, it included the landscape plan. The landscape plan was so important to the protection of the abutters that the planning board required sheet L1 to be recorded with the registry of deeds. To my knowledge, the approved landscape plan has never been amended in any way by any action of the planning board. An approved landscape plan cannot be altered solely on some private conversations between the developer and an abutter, or with an individual member of the planning board. This plan requires many plantings along both Walnut Farm and Sergeant Woods, even though he's been saying he doesn't need to put any there. The landscape plan has many new plantings that are supposed to be along the Sergeant Woods line. The developer submitted a bond in the form of a letter of credit to ensure that the work would be done. Unfortunately, the developer failed to complete the work required in the landscape plan, and the town allowed the letter of credit to expire without being called. I request that the planning board require all of the plantings in the 2015 site plan be required in any amended site plan, and to establish a deadline to complete the work. I further request that the board require the applicant to supply a bond to ensure the compliance, and that the board call the bond in a timely manner if it is not completed by the deadline. The deadlines slip a lot, but you can't let if he doesn't hit the deadline, you need to call the bond. The applicant now claims that the original approved plan that he submitted calls for species of trees that would not grow in the region. I request that the board, if the board entertains any changes to the landscape plan, that it require that the applicant supply documentation from a landscape architect that the substitute vegetation provide at a minimum the same level of screening that would have been provided in the original plan. Also, seeing that the new plan requires substantial regrading just outside of the 50-foot undisturbed buffer along the property line with Sergeant Woods, I ask that the planning board require that the town engineer periodically inspect and certify that the effectiveness of that erosion control until the site is fully stabilized. Because in the past, Sergeant Wood has suffered significant silt runoff from their site. They're way up on the hill, we're at the bottom of the hill. I thank you for your time, and if you got any comments or questions, I'll glad to answer them.
I have no comments. Barbara?
No, I have no comments. I agree.
Anybody else from the board? Comments? No.
Thank you.
Well, he just did what I was going to ask, to have him give that to Jim.
Jamie Fitzpatrick, Walnut Farm Road. So I'm on the other side of the development as Roger. So we talked about some of his concerns in Sergeant Woods. I'll talk about some of the concerns from the Walnut Farm perspective. Some of you that have been on the board for a while have heard me talk and have seen letters. I've sent a number of letters in over the time. I've sent them to the selectmen for enforcement. I sent them to the planning board asking that you maintain the 2015 plan. We're in 2023. It's still not planted as per the plan. The board has heard comments made that Mr. McDonough cut a deal with me. No such deal was ever cut. One is, I'm not in a position to cut a deal. What I had said is, can you please plant the trees? And I have said, if the board okays it, it would be better to have evergreens than leaf trees, because in the winter you don't get to screen. And we've had that discussion numerous times. Nevertheless, the full plantings have not been done either. I'm more familiar with the Sergeant Woods side, and there certainly haven't been done on the Sergeant Woods side. The plan has been there for a very long time. I've been coming to meetings dealing with this situation since 2008. So I have heard, not only in my particular area, but other areas in this development, repeated statements to, well, whether right or wrong, this is where we are, we need something done. And I'm hearing that yet again today. Whether right or wrong, this is where we are on the retaining wall, I want to waive it. Whether right or wrong, here's where we are on the plantings, I want just you guys to change the rules. You'll see that there's a number of people not here that have been here very often from Sergeant Woods and from Walnut Farms. And I can tell you the perception in the community is we're just going to get sold down the road and the board's going to give whatever is requested because that's what happens in this town. And that shouldn't be the perception. That shouldn't be what happens in the town. There was a plan. There has been sufficient time to fulfill the plan. The plan hasn't been fulfilled, and now you're being asked, particularly a number of you who are very new to the board, who don't have this history, are being asked, can you just waive it? It is what it is right now, and we've done what we can, and we've made some plantings, and it should be good enough. Can you just let it go? So to give you just a bit of history, when I bought in, as well as some of the others in the neighborhood, we had a 200-foot setback. It was granted by this planning board. Well, it was the town structure, and the planning board had said, we're going to hold to that 200. The applicant went to ZBA, they got that adjusted, and it ended up being a 90-foot setback that would be held to. But part of the deal ended up being with the planning board that, okay, there needs to be a tree screen for the betterment of the abutters, many of whom bought their properties thinking they had a 200-foot setback. They lost that. So the applicant has gotten the benefit of the adjustments that were made by the zoning board. Rightfully so, the zoning board made the decision, the applicant got his adjustments, and he's been able to use those adjustments to his betterment. The abutters are still waiting for their benefit that was supposed to happen from this plantings screening, and it hasn't happened. And I urge the board, I don't have all the sightings that Mr. Hamill had, but I would urge the board also. There is a plan. At some point in time, the board needs to draw the line and say, we need the plan to be committed. Again, if there's going to be any changes to the plan, my recommendation would be that it's better to have coniferous trees that are evergreens than it is to have deciduous trees with the leaves coming off. That said, I'll settle for anything that matches the plan or provides the same screening as Mr. Hamill has just mentioned. The residents, the abutters, shouldn't be the one that take this on the chin. There's commitments made, and the board should not simply waive those because it's convenient or because basically we've outlasted the board that had a lot more history with what's been going on. So I urge the newer members to get with Mr. Dockett, has the records of the planning board. There's been many letters sent. There's been letters forwarded. I would share those with all the new members of the board so they can understand the history. The abutters are really looking for the planting screenings that they've been waiting for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Do you have any other comments, Jen?
My recommendation at this point is to continue this because I don't think the application is complete, and there's clearly a number of issues that need to be addressed. I will just say as a side note, I will not be able to be at your next meeting, so if you wanted to continue it to a month out, but that is obviously completely at the board, I just will not be at the next meeting on the 25th.
And how long do you have the time frame that this has been continued?
It was applied for in September.
September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Where it's 7 months.
I'm sorry, it was first heard in September. It was applied for in August.
Okay, so we're 200 and some odd days.
Let's continue it for a month.
Let me just pull up the calendars to do this correctly. So we're looking at May
Be May 9th.
9th.
Yeah, so that would be the 25th, 9th. I will make a motion to continue this till May 9th.
Second.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marchand,
Aye.
Mr. Papachristos,
Aye.
Ms. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
get a question? Does that give him enough time to give us everything that we're talking about right now? You guys, we just talked about a lot of stuff.
Technically, I think so, yeah, I mean,
I guess if you could
it
always...
will still continue because the AOT has to be dealt with. So it'll
Yeah,
take,
so just to be clear though, the alteration of terrain,
Right.
the amended permit that I do think you need,
right,
the planning board can't require you to have obtained that as a condition of approval or before they would consider it. I would apply to AOT or at least inquire with AOT.
Right.
But that can't be a contingency of the board. You will not have an alteration of terrain permit approved for you to see in the next month. That is
oh, I know,
unrealistic.
yeah. We're dealing with them right now on the other end, so,
Yep.
you know, we're with them every day right now.
Right, I just think that this, if we approve this today as is,
Yeah.
and it went to AOT, it's going to change from AOT, so you're gonna have to come back here.
Right. I know I'm coming back, no matter how.
Right, I'm just saying if, putting the retaining wall tree plantings aside, I'm just saying,
Right.
if we approve the drainage tonight,
Right,
that you would have to come back here because it's gonna change again.
because I'm over 40,000 square feet.
Well, the threshold's 100,000 square feet, but
Right,
I
right.
think there's just some additional information that needs to be added to the drawings for them to be able to review and approve this.
Right,
And FYI, I'm not willing to forgo the waiver on the plantings either. I want something done about that, out of
Okay.
respect for the neighbors. So I'm putting that out there so that you
Yep.
can talk to Mr. McDonough about that.
yep.
This is more for the newer members. Other than copies of the original site plan and the landscaping plan, is there anything else that I can supply you with?
I think the memos from Mike McNally would be helpful, specific to this project. There's 3, I believe, as well as some site plans. Do you have anything?
The most recent as-built survey plan from Alpine Survey that was submitted back in December.
Okay. All of those documents are available online. They are on the planning board webpage. The originals are not there. So those I will print you out copies of what was actually recorded.
Okay.
Perfect.
And probably the original notice of decision.
That would also be helpful. So we will see you in a month or so.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Roger.
Can I request that the original landscape plan be put online?
Sure.
You can scan it and put it online, right?
I actually have it digitally because that's a project I'm working on, is downloading all the plans that have been recorded for the town, and I believe I have those already.
Yeah, a digital copy would be nice for that.
Yeah. I have a copy, I just gotta go back and it's buried in my email somewhere. But I have a copy.
Well, there are a couple of people who aren't here this evening. I'll make sure that they also have.
That would be helpful. Just for the clarification, the agenda has the wrong date in it. So I must have missed that. It's referencing the March 28th meeting.
Oh, the header is correct.
The header's
but
correct.
Next line does say the 28th of March.
Just in case that comes up, just for a point of clarification. So next on the agenda, I'm not sure if you guys want to stick around, but it's approval of the meeting minutes from March 28th, 2023.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Barbara, you're super quiet if you were talking.
Yeah.
I
I
heard a
missed it.
second, but heard a second, but didn't see it. Okay. Okay, Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marsham,
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis.
I was not involved, so I should abstain
You
from
can
it.
vote in favor as long as you don't believe that there is something fundamentally wrong with the,
Aye.
You can abstain if you'd like.
No, that's fine. I read them.
Ms. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Next is approval of the NEPA manifest for $724.38.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marsham,
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis,
Aye.
Ms. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye. Next is age-friendly communities. Ms. Radin.
So my coworker Scott Bogle was before the select board last week
Yeah, he did.
to see if the town wanted to participate in the second round of age-friendly communities. It is effectively doing a evaluation of the community for identifying actions and resources to enable people of all ages to prosper in the town. It comes out with an assessment report at the end. It gathers input and advice from a number of different stakeholder groups and representing a lot of different interests from around the town to identify what can the town do, what are you already doing that maybe people didn't know about. It's a really nice program. It pulls a lot of other people that aren't always involved in community projects of that type into a planning effort. It's actually a very timely project. And my understanding, Bob, please correct me if I'm wrong, you voted to participate,
We did.
which is fantastic. It's a nice project to dovetail into some of the housing work that I'll touch base on in a second. So usually there's at least one planning board member involved. I believe Jim might also be participating.
I'll be the liaison to RPC. Scott came to me, Scott Vogel from RPC came to me as one of your RPC commissioners. And I was like, yes, this is really good. I've actually sent out, not to planning board members, but to some townspeople that I thought might be appropriate to be on the committee. And Thursday, I'll be talking with Scott further about number of people and what have you. It would be good to have somebody from the planning board on the committee, just as it'd be good to have somebody from the library, from the rec commission, as long as some people from the general public that have an interest. Most towns, from what the surveys have produced, many towns in the area have a lot of services and programs geared towards younger participants. For a lot of people, a lot of the towns, as you go up in age, that drops off and there's very little. Luckily, in Newton, we have several very good things, one of whom is sitting in this room, who just started a senior, or actually it's not senior, it's for people that want to improve their mobility and balance and what have you, Mr. Ryan. That's something that Newton offers that most towns don't. Hopefully this is going to point out Newton's strengths, Newton's weaknesses, and even possibly some things that could be done to enhance what's already offered.
Especially when Newton is an aging community.
Yes.
I will say one thing, having seen, I'm not actually going to be overly involved in this project, but I've seen it go through a number of communities. We get a lot on the youth, like children. We get a little bit more for seniors. There's definitely a gap in that age range in between. So
Those 30 to
I'm
45
going to go with my
year-olds.
own demographic. So if there are folks who are interested that are in that demographic and may be interested, I would strongly appeal to that grouping as well. We tend to get the others represented on age friendly. I do apologize that I'm staring at some of our newer members, but
Are you getting the hint?
Yeah. Are the meetings, can we join in Zoom, or do we know when the meetings are going to take place? Is there,
I think
it's
that's
just something
to,
we
I
need
think
to
that's
plan.
to be determined. I know that we certainly have done hybrid and virtual meetings. I suspect hybrid is probably most likely.
Okay.
But I think the dates and times are still being worked out.
Okay.
Because I've already committed myself to being liaison, they will be. The commitment is 4 meetings, basically in the course of the next 8 months.
Okay.
There's a survey to review and commission, survey results to review,
Okay.
outcomes. I mean, it's not a major time sink, but as Ms. Rowden said, my list isn't all, people my age and older. Yeah, I'm trying to find people from various ages who will hopefully argue for their own demographic.
Great. Sounds great.
So
Yeah.
please think about it.
One of us will do it.
Yeah, one of us will
Yeah.
do it.
You can put,
Okay.
you can put Eddie down, and then we'll put an initial at some point.
Yeah, put it this way, the Eddies are the first people to confirm a commitment.
Nice. Very good.
I now have to start strong-arming the library and recreation.
Right. Yeah.
Just because it needs to be brought.
Down for recreation.
Yeah.
The other thing I will report out is, I believe last night, Mr. Marchand, the Board of Selectmen approved the creation of a revolving account to handle the New Hampshire grant monies.
That's next, though. Well, you're skipping ahead.
I attended there was recently a webinar done by Invest New Hampshire on the manifesting and submittal of bills. Convoluted but understandable. I understand that the treasurer already has the letter to create the revolving account.
Lisa already took care of it, or she?
Yeah, we approved it, we signed it, so Lisa, it was put in Lisa's hands to open the account so that when the money comes in, she'll have someplace to put it, and then she can cut the other check to go out.
So what will happen is that RPC will, this is for the housing grant to do all the housing master plan work, we've been doing 2 monthly reports. We haven't really started doing the work, but once we have done enough to bill for, it'll be either monthly or every other month. We'll submit a bill to the town, then the town can submit for reimbursement from the granting source, the state, and then once you get paid, we get paid.
Yeah, and when it comes in, Jim will add his time onto it, so that.
Actually, my time has to get added on when it's submitted to them, so
Oh, okay.
the money will
prior to-
will come
okay.
back.
It goes
And I
into
still have to talk with the bookkeeper about how that is going to be divided on the books.
Yep,
But as far as the work of the Invest New Hampshire task, one part that I need to confirm with you is I need to figure out who would like to come to the Housing Academy. That is the workshop training through Cooperative Extension. I believe I handed out or I forwarded the flyer for the dates.
I think you handed it out last meeting.
Okay, I can send it around digitally. We do need to identify folks because you have to sign up by May 5th. I will be going to everything and I'm happy to share it with everyone. The dates for the Housing Academy, and 3 are virtual, 2 are in person, are it's May 9th is the first one, that's virtual. Then there's one on June 1st that is in Bedford, and the June 13th is also in Bedford. There are 2 more in July on Thursdays that are both virtual. If you can't make all of them, that is okay. If you especially can't make the in-person ones in Bedford because you're working at a job that's 9 to 5, that's okay. Everything will get posted. You can still participate. If you can make it to 2 or 3, that's great. If you can't make it to all of it, not a big deal.
I have a random question. Do you know if there's continuing education certificates offered for that?
There might be for planning. My doubt is for engineering.
Oh, for AICP?
Yeah, yeah.
Or just,
Hey, it was worth the effort.
It is.
I could get paid to go.
That's the other thing.
July 11th, that's a Tuesday.
In speaking to somebody from Invest New Hampshire, she suggested that most likely I should attend, and at least a board member should. The board members are entitled to a stipend. She couldn't tell me how much it was.
It's
However, as a staff member, I'm not.
It's $250.
Oh, okay.
My new VTO time off policy.
Enough to fill your tank with gas.
Almost.
You can sign me up for them. I'll make as many as
Okay,
I can.
I will send you the link to register.
Okay.
Or I'll have Jim forward it to you.
Yeah, send it to me and I'll get it out. Did you guys get your emails fixed?
Mine works.
Mine doesn't work.
Yours is working, yours isn't.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so that's the housing part.
Yeah.
I would like to, and as I mentioned earlier, I can't be at your next meeting, but at the meeting after that, or a meeting in May, I'll put it that way, I would like to give you guys a presentation of the Regional Housing Needs Assessment that my office produced. It just came out in March. It's available online right now, but basically half an hour presentation on this is the data on housing in the region and some specifically for Newton, because we do get down to the municipal level. I want to give you that overview, so as we are talking about the housing chapter, you have a frame of reference. I will, as the course of doing the master plan chapter, however, be doing a deeper dive into Newton data explicitly. We have some Newton data, we just couldn't get into the deep dive for all of our communities, so that's what the grant is in part going to allow me to do. So that can be in your master plan, it can be used to make decisions, but also to identify whether you are in compliance with the state workforce housing law, which is that you are providing reasonable opportunities for someone to construct workforce qualifying housing. It doesn't mean you have to they don't have to be building it, but you are allowing them through your zoning to not have restrictions on that ability. So it's kind of a lot, but that's what I would like to do as the intro. But if you go to the RPC website, and I can also have Jim forward this, if you want to take a look at the Regional Housing Needs Assessment ahead of time because you're really, really curious, or you can't sleep one night, it is a long document. There's a lot there, but it's really interesting, and you can just skim a little bit of it and get the idea. With that, I am done.
So you brought up a point I wanted to touch on. Is there anything on the agenda for next meeting, the 25th?
Actually, no.
Can we just
Master plan.
cancel the meeting since you're not going to be here?
I will not be here.
I'm not going to be here. And there's nothing on the agenda.
That is the choice. You've met your statutory requirement for April.
Unless Barbara wants to come in and have a meeting.
Not really.
Tell us how you really feel, Bob.
No, I'm fine with skipping it if we don't have anything to review.
So, Mr. Moran, was that a motion, or are you using
I'm
your
asking for
chairman's
somebody
prerogative?
to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we not meet on the 25th.
I second that.
Do we have to do a roll for that?
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marchand,
Aye.
Mr. Papachristus,
Aye.
Ms. Eddy,
Aye.
Ms. Moran.
Aye.
Sorry, Mr. Moran. That's unanimous.
She still hasn't changed her name after 10 years. It's okay.
You will have a fairly, on May 9th, you have this continuation, and there's 2 in the pipeline. All depends on whether or not they get their applications in or not.
Okay.
Are folks okay if, based on that agenda, if it looks like we'll have time, I'll give the housing presentation. If it doesn't look like we'll have time, we'll plan for it on the 23rd of May.
Is that the day after Memorial Day or the week before?
That's the week before.
Yeah, okay.
And I will let you know, she doesn't toot her own horn. Jennifer does very good presentations. I've attended many, but she's also our regional planning commission's land use lead.
Thank you.
Well, we have one of the better ones and the best ones in the county.
Thanks, Jim.
Hey, you guys never get the credit you deserve.
That is true.
So with all that being said and done, I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn.
Perfect.
Chair just declares it.
We can adjourn. 8:37. Thank you, everybody.